I wasn't lost. I was home. That's what I told myself when the gate guy at Cedar Crest tapped the residents-only sign like it outranked the Constitution and waved me back. And 2 months later, I slid my grandmother Alma's cracked leather deed folder across a courtroom table and watched the HOA president's fingers start to shake, while the judge looked up and said, "Counsel, explain." So yeah, that happened. My name is Evan Cole, 45, a civil engineer by trade, and stubborn by practice. Coffee for blood shoulders that complain every time I climb a ladder Alma left me. 1 acres outside Silver Creek, Idaho, just pines and fence lines, and a ditch that pretends to be a creek when it rains. Nothing fancy but paid off, and mine taxes on autopay every April, with confirmation numbers saved like rosary beads. I had not been out there in a bit. Life gets loud. And when I finally turned off County 9, expecting dust and silence, I found a stone arch that said, Cedar Crest, Meadows. Streetlights where stars should be. The asphalt still warm. A security guard leaning out of his booth. "Residents only, sir." Turn around, and then the white Range Rover eased up like a threat wrapped in leather, and a woman in a cream linen suit stepped out without collecting a single speck of Idaho on her shoes. Sunglasses. You could see your guilt in. She scanned me like a barcode. "Sweetheart, hiring closed weeks ago. Leave your number if you want a day work," and I said as evenly as I could that I wasn't looking for work, that my family's title went back to 1974. And she smiled the smile of a teacher who enjoys sending kids to the hall. Our title company did a forensic search. Adverse possession. The land was abandoned. It belongs to the HOA. Now then. She raised her phone and snapped my plate for safety, and in that click, I heard the plan. I took my anger home and turned it into order deed on the table tax receipts in a neat stack. Old survey maps that still smelled like blue ink. The kitchen light buzzing like a fly that refuses to die. And I called a lawyer who doesn't need a billboard. Her name is Nora Shepard. Her office smells like lemon oil, and arguments won. She listened without interruption. "Show me your receipts," she said. I slid the pile over. She nodded once. "If you rush for an injunction, they'll file bankruptcy and freeze this whole circus. 80+ families will cry on camera, and you'll become the villain of your own story. Or you do the mean smart thing. Let them finish. Document everything. Dates, threats, payments. Then we file for declaratory judgment fraud and unjust enrichment. When the record is complete, and if we prove it, they pay my fees, not you. You know what I mean." It felt like swallowing a nail. But I agreed twice a week. I parked on the public shoulder and hit record, framing crews popping nail guns like metronomes, plumbers dragging bright coils of PEX electricians, braiding wire through studs, kids on scooters weaving through new cul-de-sacs as if they had always been there, and the HOA president. Her name was Marla Benton, pointing at the world like it was a touchscreen that owed her obedience, never actually touching anything, just stabbing the air with a manicured finger. The squeeze started quiet and turned cruel at 6:01 a.m., knock with a clipboard fine for obstructing a common access lane, because my pickup sat in my own driveway. $600. Page 3. Section 1B. She sang then a Facebook group called Ponderosa Moms, lit up with my truck and plate circled in red, beware. This man and the school district client emailed to say they had chosen another vendor for optics. That word that tastes like tin. Code enforcement called about an illegal dump site on parcel. An officer named Carmen walked the whole perimeter and found nothing off the record, she said. Holloway Ridge, the developer behind Cedar Crest. Files, neighbor complaints, right before permits get rushed. It's a pattern. A young deputy ran my plates on the shoulder one afternoon and told me. Benton claimed I was filming children, then heard the nonsense in his own mouth and told me to keep it civil because if she called again, he'd have to act that night. Someone painted perv across my garage in 2-foot letters. I photographed it, filed a report, scrubbed until my hands hurt, while the neighbor's blinds quivered. And at work, my boss closed the door and said a client was nervous. 2 weeks paid leave to let things cool off. My son texted from his restaurant job that a private investigator had shown up. Thinking about my temper. Black line investigations. Duke Merritt. The card looked like a dare, and when the IRS email arrived saying my return had been selected for audit based on a third-party report, I laughed that dry laugh. That sounds like a cough. I'm a W-2 with boring deductions. Nora said if we could tie the tip to Blackline or the HOA, it becomes another brick in our wall. Small bricks make walls. That's how you build them. The crack in theirs came from a junior title examiner named Jace Kim, who looked like he'd been living on coffee and conscience. He handed Nora an internal email stamped deep in Prairie Title's system subject line. Cole Parcel. Risk assessment. Body text that read like a confession. Sold as a strategy owner has paid taxes continuously. Adverse possession. Weak start pre-sales to create leverage. Move fast, finish faster if he sues. Make it costlier to fight than to fold. And then the sentence that made the room colder. Side consultant fee for title clearance approved. Nora tapped the page. That's not an email. That's a fuse. She filed for a temporary restraining order and set our declaratory judgment for the first available date that could hold all this weight. Before we reached the courtroom, a reporter named Kayla Reyes from Channel 12 Spokane knocked on my door. Boots that said she buys her own gear, a voice that makes you want to tell the truth. She filmed my receipts, not my rage. Alma's ledger on the coffee table. The deed with her handwriting. The April confirmations highlighted. Kayla asked Marla for comment, and the station got a 2-paragraph threat about defamation, which in TV language is permission to air. The segment ran Friday at 6, and the drones showed new asphalt. Slicing up my land, my voice saying, I'm not trying to stop families from moving in. I'm trying to stop people from moving the line. That says what's yours is yours. Messages poured in. 60%. Said Fight 40 said. Get over it. And Sunday, I came home to a front door. I know. I locked nothing stolen. Just a single sheet of paper on the kitchen table. Drop it or lose everything. My neighbor Mouse. Ellison had written down a black Audi's plate the day before KTZ 914. The deputy ran it and found Blackline. He suggested I stay with family until the hearing, so I slept on my sister's pink guest sheets and tried not to grind my teeth down to rice. Court day came tight and bright. Small room where you could hear people try not to breathe. Judge Eleanor Pike, 50s glasses halfway down her nose, a face that doesn't do cute. Peter Lang for the HOA tried a last-second motion to dismiss at 8:58 for a 9 a.m. Hearing gravel at a train denied in one word. Sid and Nora stood with a stack of exhibits that looked like a wall. You could live behind the deed. The tax receipts with confirmation numbers. The 40,000 wire labeled. Consulting from Holloway Ridge to Prairie Title. The Ponderosa Moms smear. With timestamps. The code complaint showing the HOA office as the source. The break-in note bagged with a case tag, and then the internal email laid on the bench like a live wire. The judge read long enough for chairs to start shifting. Asked Lang. If he knew about it, he tried to dance. Nora called Jace. He swore in and told the truth. With a voice that only shook once, Carmen testified. The dumping complaint came from the HOA's number, the deputy admitted. Ms. Benton filed 3 complaints in 6 days, and when Marla finally sat, Nora walked the deed to the stand and set it down. Who authorized photographing Mr. Cole's plate? We document trespassers, she said. Nora tapped the deed. Trespassers, like the owner of record, and the room felt the hinge of the day swing. After a recess that felt like a week, the order came like a clean cut. Title quieted in my name, all sales and transfers at Cedar Crest. Frozen credible evidence of intentional misrepresentation by Holloway Ridge. Partners and Cedar Crest HOA referral to the county attorney for potential criminal charges, a removal of Ms. Benton from her HOA role. Pending state review, the bailiff took a single step toward the defense table, and someone in the 3rd row forgot how to breathe. For a second, I didn't cheer or grin or pose. I stood with my hands flat on the table and let my breath land, because proof had finally spoken louder than money. That's the win, but the story doesn't end. Where the gavel drops, here's the part that keeps me up, and I won't pretend it's simple. Those 88 families, teachers, nurses, the HVAC guy, 2 kids who drew a chalk city where Alma's plum trees used to be, didn't forge a wire or write a memo about leverage. They bought keys to a dream and got used as human shields. The law says one thing, and my gut says another. What makes justice the win, or what you do with it after? You know what I mean. I didn't raise my voice. I raised my receipts, learned to love the green bubble that says, "Screenshot saved." But the next move is the one that tells you who you are. Sell every roof and pocket what the crooks tried to steal sign the house is over at cost, and let the internet call me a fool. Force the developer to pay, and let the owners keep their keys free and clear, even if I walk away with nothing but the smell of Alma's paper and a clean pulse. Where would you draw the line if your name sat on the deed and your life was measured in proof? Tell me what's right, what's fair, and what you've seen. When power tries to call itself the law. Drop your take in the comments. Argue with me. Tell your HOA stories. And if you want the follow-up on how we balance a scale that was never built for people like us, hit subscribe. Because I'm keeping my receipts, all of them.